Well, here we are, day 1 of 100 days in hardcore Minecraft. I started this world just like any other by punching a couple of trees. Then I collected some bamboo because apparently I was at the edge of a jungle biome. I killed a couple of sheep for their wool, and then I made some tools, which I used to kill more animals.
Give me your beef. Is that a black donkey?
There was a small cave on the hillside, so I went inside to mine some stone and iron. But before I could go any farther, I needed to get some coal for torches. Unfortunately, there really wasn't anything to this cave, and I was starving to death, so I went back to the surface to cook my food.
Delivery.
I crafted some fresh stone tools and a bed, and that was the end of day 1. On day 2, I decided to pack up my things and find a better place to live. It wasn't long before I found a village, so I looted the place. And then I thought I saw the calcite of an amethyst geode, so I went to check it out, but it turned out to just be diorite. By the time I got back to the village, it was already getting dark, so I commandeered a villager house, and in the morning it was back to business. As I was cooking up some stuff, an intruder invaded my camp.
What the?
But after a short battle, we came to a truce. At least, until he stole my coal.
Give me my coal, man.
But anyway, after we had finished looting the village, we decided to head out by boat and look for a good place to settle.
Editor, turn on super speed.
The main thing I was looking for was a spruce biome because, as most of you probably know, I can't build without spruce. Also, I should probably explain who this other monkey in my boat is. My brother started this world with me, but he died after a few days, so you probably won't be seeing him in the rest of the video. So after a while, we found a ruined portal that had a super apple, which may have just saved my life towards the end of my 100 days. We decided to settle in the spruce forest, and I found another village really close to the shore, and there was a scary looking cave nearby. So I looted the village, made some iron gear, and then in the morning I went down into the cave. With the ray tracing shaders, this cave looked amazing. I could have looked at this scene all day, but I had some ores to mine and mobs to fight.
Whoa! I hate creepers.
But the good news is, this cave turned out to be massive. I mined a bunch of iron, and before I knew it, I was down deep. Which is good because I needed some deep slate for my house.
Get out of here, man.
A lot of the time spent in this cave was dedicated to fighting off mobs, but I did get a decent amount of ores, including a few diamonds. Once I had enough iron for a full set of armor, I decided to head back up to the surface because these caves were just too dangerous. After smelting all of my stuff, I got to work on preparing an area for my starter house. And then after taming this dog I saw running by, I went down to the mines to collect some cobblestone and andesite, and then I got some logs for my house. I started planning out a layout using andesite walls in between oak logs, and when I had something I was happy with, I got to work on building up those walls with some glass pane windows. It seemed like I never had enough wood, so I was constantly running back and forth between my house and the forest to collect more logs. On day 10, as I was building, I had a visitor, so I invited him down to the river, and when he took off his armor to go for a swim, I snatched it up and said goodbye. For the rest of day 10 and 11, I basically just ran around chopping down the entire forest because I didn't want to run out of wood again. So I finished up the walls of my house and then got started on the roof, which would be made out of deep slate with a spruce trim. After a quick trip to the mines, I finished up the roof, and the house was looking pretty good if I do say so myself. On night 13, I finally moved into my house, and then on day 14, I used the wool that I had to build a couple of walls. I decorated the balcony a bit, and then I set off on a little wool gathering expedition. As I was returning through the village that night, I think I stumbled upon something illegal.
What's going on here?
Anyway, on day 16, I finished up the second level walls, and then I filled in some wooden walls for the attic, and my house was basically finished, or at least on the outside. On day 17, my task was landscaping, so I planted some trees and leaf bushes, I grew some tall grass, and then I got some clay for flower pots and did some decorating. On day 18, I did a little work on the inside of my house, and then I connected it to one of the village paths. When I woke up on day 19, there was a super cool light ray coming in through the window and perfectly illuminating this chair, so of course I had to sit in it. And then I was off to work in the mines to collect some cobblestone, which I used to make some fancy carrot farms. On day 20, I collected some gravel for coarse dirt, which I used to add some additional landscaping. And then I built another carrot farm since I've heard that golden carrots are the best food. I'm not really sure what the point of these cobblestone walls is since they don't really keep any mobs out. I just thought they looked nice. So I also spruced up this potato farm that I'd planted before. And on day 21, I went down to the river and planted all of my sugarcane because I'm definitely going to need some enchantments before I can go to the Nether. For the rest of day 21, I basically just tended to my farms, did a bit of landscaping, and then on day 22 I started designing the interior for my house. On day 23, while I was just sitting there peacefully in my chest, I had a bit of a scare. I figured it was time to move all of my stuff inside, so I made a storage room and started organizing all of my things. I also wanted to make an indoor mine entrance, so I cleared out a space on the back of my house. I made the frame out of logs and then basically just continued the roof down and filled it in with deep slate.
Bruh.
Anyway, I filled in the walls with fences, and now all I had to do was dig. On day 27, I started a little tree farm, and while I was waiting for those trees to grow, I ran around collecting as much food as I could. I chopped down the trees as they grew, expanded the farm, and basically just continued the cycle for several days until I had a pretty good amount of food and wood. The next day I went down to the river to harvest my sugarcane, only to find that it hadn't grown even a bit. I guess I must have been too far away so it wasn't loaded. I was a bit impatient, so I grabbed a boat and set off to explore the surrounding area, and most importantly collect some sugarcane. After a little while I'd found some super cool snowy mountains, so of course I had to climb to the top and check it out. And this place was just amazing. I wanted to start building right there and then, but unfortunately I didn't have any materials. So instead I got back on the boat and collected some more sugarcane, which I then planted back at the house. This time I decided to sit and watch it grow because I really needed this sugarcane. After more than a full day, the sugarcane hadn't even grown once, so I just collected it all and decided to find the rest manually since I needed less than a stack. While I was out exploring, I noticed a shipwreck sticking out of the water, so I dove down and grabbed all that loot. And after a very long search, I managed to find the buried treasure, which had some very nice stuff inside. I started the journey back home, collecting that last bit of sugarcane on the way. And on day 36, I made an enchanting table with all of the bookshelves to make it level 30. And then I set it aside while I went to the mines to level up. I started off strip mining, but the ores just weren't there, so instead I went to explore a cave that I'd found earlier. It was kind of infested with mobs, but it was full of all kinds of good stuff too. This was actually my first time finding a geode in survival. The calcite would have been pretty useful for building my house, but at least I got some amethyst to make a spyglass. Anyway, back to mining. So I found a few diamonds and then I stumbled upon an iron vein, which was also a first for me. The problem was that the place was crawling with mobs and I only had a few torches left, so I basically just ran around like a madman trying to mine as much iron as I could while fighting off monsters. After I had mined most of the iron, I went back to exploring the cave and mining all of the ores I could find for experience. Once I was level 30, I went back to the surface, made some new diamond tools, then I set up the enchanting table in the attic and got a very nice enchantment on my pickaxe. Then, well, I went back to the mines again. This time it was a much more serious expedition and the main goal was a full set of diamond armor.
Hey, dungeon.
After looting this dungeon, it was back to diamond mining. Well, until I found another dungeon. I was pretty excited to see a saddle in the chest because that meant I could go out to the plains and tame a horse. So after that dungeon, I went and found another dungeon. That's right, 3 dungeons within just a couple hundred blocks of each other. So yeah, I spent a few days exploring this cave, and then as I was preparing to leave on day 41, I noticed a lush cave. I didn't really have any plans to use any of these blocks, but I figured I might as well pick them up while I'm here, right? And now there's just one last thing I had to do before heading back up.
Ooh, glow squids.
And now it's time to go home. On day 42, I really wanted to get a Fortune 3 enchantment on my pickaxe, so I basically just reset the enchantments over and over again until I got Fortune 3, but the thing is, I never got Fortune 3, so I kind of just wasted all my experience for nothing. Yeah, that was probably a dumb move. Well, now I needed more experience again. I made a quick trip back to the mines just so I could get enough experience for some level 1 enchantments on my iron armor, and then I built a portal and went to the Nether. Now that, I have to say, is a pretty great spawn. There's literally a fortress right there. Naturally, my first instinct was to go explore the fortress, but I quickly realized that I wasn't prepared for that and I just barely escaped with my life. So instead, I went back to the portal, made a little wall around the area to protect me from blazes, and then I started a tunnel mine where I'd be safe. Or so I thought. But yeah, I spent a few days tunneling through the netherrack and mining quartz, and even a little bit of ancient debris, until I was level 30 again. This time I enchanted my sword and I got a really great enchantment. I had 2 netherite from my nether trip, so I used one on my sword and then I went to test that bad boy out. And yeah, after a night of fighting mobs, I was back to level 30 again, so I went home and enchanted another pickaxe.
Still no fortune, bruh.
On day 48, I went back to the Nether for some more strip mining. I was down there for a few more days, and since I started off at level 28 this time, I was able to get a much higher level and a whole bunch of ancient debris. Back in the overworld, of course I did some enchanting and combining, and finally, Fortune 3. I also got a feather falling book, which is pretty good, but no one cares about that. This is what we've all been waiting for.
Huh? He's just jealous.
The first thing I did with my new diamonds was make a full set of armor. I enchanted the helmet, and then I went to the mountains to see if I could mine some coal with my new fortune pickaxe since I was constantly running out of torches. While I was mining, I ran into a cave, which was more like a mob fighting arena, but it had a lot of coal, so I did my best to pretend that the mobs weren't there. Luckily with Fortune 3, I had a ton of coal in no time. So I went back home, enchanted my pants, and then I turned all of my armor into netherite. I already had a pretty good idea of what kind of castle I wanted to build in the mountains, so I went to the mines to collect a lot of stone, andesite, and deep slate. On day 53, I took my saddles to the plains to find a donkey and a horse, and the first horse I found was quite possibly the slowest horse I've ever seen.
Unnatural selection.
The second horse was pretty good though, so I took it to explore the rest of the plains, but I didn't find any donkeys. On day 54, I loaded up my inventory and took a load of materials to the mountains. And there they are. Trying to get my horse up the mountains was pure torture with this new powdered snow, but eventually we made it. I dropped off all of these materials and then I went home and back by boat with another load of materials. And I forgot to bring a bed. I spent the whole night trying to collect string to make a bed, and by the time I had collected enough string, it was already morning. But that's alright because in the morning I started flattening out an area and planning out a rough layout for my castle. Once I had settled on the layout, I connected it to the ground and did some snowscaping to help it blend in better with the surroundings. There was a bit of a problem though because one side of the castle was basically just floating there and I didn't have much snow. I ended up just kind of making a hollow shell of cobblestone and then covering up the outside with snow. Anyway, now it was time to start building up the towers by the gate and the walls around the courtyard. By the end of day 61, I had one tower and wall finished, so I ran around the mountains to check it out and it was looking pretty cool. On day 62, I built another identical tower and then the gate in between them. And I went back to the mines again for a couple of days to collect some more materials. On day 65, once I had a fresh load of blocks, I finished up some of those inside walls and connected them to the towers, fought off some mobs, and now it was really starting to look like a castle. That night I took a trip back to my house to make a spyglass and enchant my chestplate and boots.
I'm invincible!
Now I could finally look at my castle up close but from a distance. On day 69 I did some more work on the walls and towers, and on day 70 I built up the foundation for the main building of the castle. I filled in the floor and then I made a stairway to get up. Now I was free to start building it up using stone bricks for the outer arches and a mix of stone and andesite for those inner walls. So I spent day 71 building, and on day 72 I was raided by some pillagers. I definitely wasn't planning to kill the leader in one shot. I was trying to get him low and then let his goons shoot him so I wouldn't get the effect. But since I had it, I made a trip back to my home village, and nothing happened. I guess all of the villagers were gone, so I just drank some milk instead. That was a bit of a wasted day, but on day 73 and 74 I made some serious progress on the castle. I built up the main building and tower and then got started on the roof. By day 75 the castle was nearly finished. I just had the back left to do, but I ran out of materials again, so I went back home and spent a couple of days in the mines. And on day 79 I went on a nether voyage to collect some blaze powder and ender pearls, because I wanted to be prepared to go find the stronghold before day 100. When I returned to the overworld on day 82, I loaded up my horse, which I named Bert, and headed for the mountains. However, we got caught in some deep snow. I was able to dig myself out just fine, but I couldn't dig out the blocks that Bert was standing on without hitting him.
No!
Anyway, on day 83 I mined some diorite because I had the brilliant idea of using it as a sort of snowy cobblestone, and I also got some deep slate to finish up the roof. So on day 84 it was back to building, and by day 85 the castle was basically finished, although I felt like it needed another tower on the left side. Later on day 85, I built a diorite path through the courtyard, and then I got started on a storage house on the right side. This building was super simple, just some logs and walls with a deep slate and spruce roof, and as you probably guessed, filled with chests. Looks like the foxes approve. I did some additional decorating with some firewood in one corner and a small Christmas tree over here. On day 87, I started building up a small tower on the left side, and I decided to make it a balcony instead, which I think turned out to be the right decision. So now that the castle was complete, it was time to fight the Ender Dragon. I went home and spent way too long gearing up because I wanted to be 100% prepared. I wasn't entirely sure that I had enough Ender Eyes though, so just to be safe I went back to the Nether and killed some more Endermen. And now finally on day 90 I was ready to head out.
Got my bed.
Okay, now I was ready. It was a long journey of a few thousand blocks, but eventually the eye went backwards. I dug straight down and now here I was, in the library. There was a bunch of good stuff, but I figured I'd come back for it after I'd finished what I came here to do. I spent some time exploring the stronghold and killing mobs, and then I found it. I made sure to set my spawn here so that I could come back after, and here we go. The first thing to do here is to shoot all of the crystals, and as it turns out I have terrible aim. I built up a bit to have a better angle, which was working until I nearly died to some dragon's breath. But luckily I had some golden apples. I knocked out a few more crystals with my bow, and then decided to climb up to get the rest. However, as I was climbing up one of the pillars, I got hit by some dragon's breath.
Oh, I'm dead.
Now let's pause here for a second. So I'm at half a heart and in a cloud of dragon's breath at the top of a pillar. I've got some water in one hand and some pearls in the other. So let me know in the comments what you would have done in this situation. So I threw the pearl. I ate that super apple, and honestly from here it was a piece of cake. I destroyed those last few crystals, and then all I had to do from there was just hit the dragon over and over again until it was dead.
That was too easy.
After 93 days, I beat the game. The 100 days aren't over just yet though, and I still had a long and dangerous journey to collect an elytra. I found the first end city just a few hundred blocks away, but there was no ship. So I killed a couple of shulkers and then continued on my search. About 800 blocks later I found another end city, but this one was tiny and again no ship. Since this one was so small I looted the whole thing and then continued on my journey. Finally I found another city, and this time it had a ship. I looted a few rooms, but it was already day 95 and I still had some things I wanted to do in the overworld, so I collected that elytra and began the journey back. Very stupidly, I forgot to bring some rockets with me, so I had to collect some blocks and build up to glide across those gaps between islands. On day 97, I found the portal back and went home.
Dope.
Apparently the bed I slept in at the stronghold didn't set my spawn, so I was back to where I started on day 1. Which seemed kind of fitting as we neared the end of this 100-day adventure. I spent the night in that first plains village, and on day 98 I traveled back and spent my XP on some new gear. In the morning of day 99 I made some rockets and traveled back to the stronghold to loot the place and collect all of those books in the library. As I was traveling home I flew over an ocean monument, which made me realize just how much there still is to do in this world. On day 100 I flew over to my castle and extended the path a bit. And then as the sun began to set I found a nice little vantage point, and just sat and reflected on an amazing 100 days.